Hello, everybody. So I am now 8 months postpartum, and since about 4 months, I started developing a crazy skin flare again. Not quite as bad as when I went through TSW, which was in 2016, but probably the worst it's been since. So in this video, I thought I would just talk briefly about what might have happened for me, what I think is going on, what I've been doing, because since I've been open about it. At first I was really anxious about it and didn't want to share, but since I've been open about it, I've had so many of you reach out and say that you too have gone through this. So you're not alone. I know I'm not alone. And so hopefully this is helpful for you, for somebody out there. So like I said, at about 4 months postpartum is when this all developed. It started just on my neck and chin, has since developed all over my face and on both of the inner flexors of my arms. It's much better now. I went through periods of red, hot, oozy, rashy, flaky, the whole sort of TSW cycle. And do I think it was a quote unquote reactivation flare of TSW? Maybe, but I don't love the term TSW in the first place because it doesn't really explain what's actually happening. Yes, it's a withdrawal of steroids, but it's also just a reactivation or an activation of the mast cells, of the immune system, of histamine. And so that is really what's causing all of these symptoms. So that is what I think is going on. Some people are just born what's called atopic. So I'm one of those people, maybe you are too. That means that your one branch of your immune system is a little bit more overactive, the IgE branch. So if you have asthma, environmental allergies, food allergies, eczema, those conditions are all part of what's called the atopic triad. You might have one, you might have two, you might have all three. And that just means that our bodies are more predisposed to dumping histamine and having overreactive mast cells. Now, what does that have to do with pregnancy and postpartum? So when you think about hormones, estrogen and histamine, they go together. When one is high, the other tends to be high. And so this is why during women's cycles, it's always important to pay attention to when you flare, if you flare, because hormones could have something to do with it. When a woman gets pregnant, estrogen goes up really high, really fast. And so histamine can also go up really high, really fast. And so if you're someone that has gotten really a lot worse in pregnancy or things flared in the beginning, this might be what's going on. Now, the enzyme called DAO, this is the enzyme that breaks down histamine. Some people don't have enough to begin with, and then sometimes this is made in the gut, this enzyme, and then sometimes this enzyme isn't made as efficiently because of gut toxicities or food sensitivities or whatever. So there might be something already happening in a person's gut that's making them able to less efficiently get rid of histamine. So when estrogen and histamine go up really high in the first trimester, depending on what's going on with a person's health in the background, DAO might need to catch up, or it definitely needs to catch up because histamine's so high, so it needs to be cleared faster. And so the placenta takes over this around the second trimester. So a lot of the time, if symptoms get better, or if a woman has eczema or had allergies that get better during pregnancy, it's a clue that there might be something going on with the DAO or histamine clearance if it gets better around the second, third trimester, because this is when the placenta starts amping up that DAO enzyme to sort of match that increase in histamine that happens in the beginning, in the first trimester. So like I was saying, if you're someone that gets better during pregnancy, then it's likely because you're not clearing histamine as efficiently as you could be when you're not pregnant. Now, if you get worse during pregnancy, there are a few different things that could be happening. One is that the histamine is high, the estrogen is high, and your body just can't produce as much DAO to help with that increased load. And so if this is the case, you're going to get more like high histamine type symptoms. So really red, hot, itchy, oozy. You might get like those little itchy histamine bumps. You hopefully I mean, you maybe hopefully know what this feels like in your body to have a high histamine reaction. You might also feel really anxious and on edge. I know for me, I can tell when my histamine is high. So originally for me, that's what I think started it, was a high histamine reaction. Now there are also other things that play into it. It's not just hormones and it's not just histamine related, because if you've gone through TSW or eczema, eventually there comes a point where it's not like as hot, as red, as itchy, as histamine-y. It's more like chronic, cycling, dry. And this is around, for me, 4 months postpartum when things started to get bad. So postpartum, when you're pregnant, estrogen and histamine are higher. You have your baby, everything tanks. So if estrogen is in the toilet, why is histamine still an issue for some people? Why do some people have issues after giving birth, like myself? I actually flared both during pregnancy and after, but anyways, if that happens, then that's also a clue. So when estrogen goes down, the skin barrier gets really disrupted. It's not as luscious, your skin's not as moist. And so if you're, again, predisposed to eczema or skin issues, then this can sort of just begin more of an inflammatory process. Another big one is sleep. This one seems obvious, but as a new mom, I think we constantly need to hear it. And I even as a naturopathic doctor, underestimated the importance of sleep. You can only do so much when you are the mother of a newborn. Sleep is what it is, but really, really please try to prioritize it. I think lack of sleep really triggered and made all of this worse. Another one is nutrient deficiencies. If you are breastfeeding or pumping or whatever, you're creating breast milk, nutrient deficiencies are a real thing. So whether that be because we're not eating as much and nourishing ourselves as much as we should be, or because our caloric load and nutrient requirements are just higher if we're breastfeeding, all of these things, if our skin is in an inflamed cycle, we need to have nutrients, especially things like zinc, vitamin A, vitamin D, to repair. If we don't have those, our skin literally cannot repair, our body can't repair. And if we're not sleeping, which is where all of this repair happens, then when is it going to do it? Now, I will do a separate video on all the supplements and things I am taking, because I am taking them. The reality is of like, sure, we want to get everything from our food, but like we just said, as a new mom, it's hard to nourish ourselves. It just is. And also, this is another rabbit hole, but our soils just aren't as nutritious and nutrient dense as they once were. And so I think using a supplement or a protein powder or both, or a nutrient powder or whatever you need to get your nutrients in during this time is fine. Again, I'm doing one of those. It's called Kachava. I'll link everything below and also do another video on everything. But nutrient deficiencies, sleep, and then stress. Again, another one that seems obvious, but stress in terms of cortisol levels. So when cortisol goes high, a whole bunch of things happen, our vagus nerve, our nervous system, etc. Nothing can heal. But I'm also going to take this a level further. So some things that we've already talked about that I think have contributed to mine and other people's issues are hormone imbalances and histamine. The next I'll call lifestyle factors such as sleep, stress, and nutrient deficiencies. And then this third one is like almost like a deeper level of stress. It's a nervous system imprint. So there have actually been a lot of studies here recently on mast cells and histamine and allergic responses, especially since the virus that should not be named and the shot that came after it, because those things both affected the mast cell system, and we're starting to see a lot more allergies and skin issues just in general. And so there's been a lot more research and interest in these areas because they haven't really been researched before. So we're starting to see a lot more stuff come out, specifically, interestingly, about the field of psychoneuroimmunology, which is the field of studying the immune system and how it connects to the nervous system. So we're starting to learn, actually, yes, that stress affects skin, but almost on a deeper traumatic spiritual level. So There was a recent study that just came out, I think last month or recently, that was saying that they've noticed that when a person has a traumatic event physically, like they broke a leg or had a burn or something that happened physically, at that time, if they were eating a lot of like apples or whatever, I'm just using that as an example, a certain sort of food, that they later developed an allergy to that food that they were eating at the same time that they broke their leg or had that trauma. So why I'm telling you this is that it's a little bit of a stretch, but not really, is that why not psychological traumas, mental, emotional, spiritual traumas as well? And so birth is all of that, and also very much of a physical trauma. And I don't necessarily say trauma in like a bad way. It's just something that has happened to the body. And if you are someone who's watching this, perhaps because you've already gone through TSW or eczema and you're going through it again, or maybe it's the first time, know that stuff is stored in the body. So for me, for example, I went through TSW, but it was an incredibly traumatic event. I haven't even brought up the underlying personal things for me that caused that. Yes, physical, but like the idea of suppression and my anxiety and mental health and all that kind of stuff that leads into a development of this. And also in many indigenous and shamanistic cultures, they say if things show up on the skin, they're showing up to be witnessed. So witnessed, of course, there's lessons personally for us. For me, I've done a lot of thinking about how I show up in the world physically, how I care about how people look at me, how my energy is different from my physical body. All things that I probably wouldn't have thought that much deep into had I not been going through this again. So of course there's those kinds of lessons as well, but also collective lessons. And I just also want to touch on this because a lot of the patients I see who are sensitive, who are allergic, are also highly sensitive people, meaning our nervous systems are sensitive and our bodies are sensitive, and tying that into being witnessed and just holding that there's a lot of stuff happening in the world right now. And what if it's possible that you're holding that for the collective, and you're being affected by the energies around us physically with the toxins and the nutrient deficiencies and the soils and the poisons and the water and all that kind of stuff, but also just the energies and the news and all of that kind of stuff. So that's also something to query that I think is a big missing piece in healing. There's, the stress, the hormones, the nutrient deficiencies, but also the underlying traumas and the triggers and the physical things that have happened in our history, but also the mental, emotional, and spiritual and collective. So that's a little bit about a rant, about a train of thought about what I think is causing this for me. Of course, everyone's going to be different. I, example, took a test for nutrient deficiencies that told me exactly which ones I was low on, and so I can supplement those more intentionally rather than just taking random things. I've taken many different functional tests in the past, so I know my body really well. I'm just trained in this, so I know things, and I know that everybody's going to be completely different. And though I've kind of laid out a high level overview of things that I think play into these issues, you're going to have a different combination of these. And I encourage you to just ask yourself some of these. Is a good place to start, and also know that it might not just be something that you're doing or not doing, and we're doing the best you can. You're doing the best you can, mama. I'm here to support you. And if anything you get from this video, get that you're not alone, okay? So hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you soon.